Hi, welcome back to Future Fiber. This is your host Jenny. This video is part of a series called I Like Your Sweater, and it's a place for me to invite other fiber arts creators who are interested in fashion and style, and for us to hear a little more about their creation process and what it means to them. Today's guest is joining us from the UK. Please welcome Florence. Thank you for joining, and yeah, welcome to I Like Your Sweater. And I am a bad planner, and I started doing this in the spring and summer, so I can't actually say I like your sweater, but I like your knit that you're wearing today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, and if you could also talk about what you're wearing.
Of course.
That would be also nice.
Okay, so hi, my name is Florence, and I have a YouTube channel and an Instagram page, which are both Handmade by Florence. I share a lot of the stuff that I've made. I follow other people's patterns. I also design a lot of my own stuff as well. I am sort of doing this as a part-time thing as I move from university to my first proper full-time job soon. And about what I'm wearing, this is the square neck camisole by Garnock Slicked, which is, I feel like it's like my signature knit. This is probably the one people like the most, and I wear it the most. And it's the knitting for olive soft blue merino, which is my favorite knitting for olive color as well. So I love this one. Really recommend the pattern and the yarn to anyone who wants to make one.
Yeah, honestly, I think you were the influence for me to knit one of those as well. So I would say you could take the claim and the title for being influential in the sphere of square neck camisole, aside from the designer, of course.
Thank you.
Given that this kind of episode is a little bit mostly about style and fashion, as it relates to knitting, I would love to get a sense of how you think about your own fashion style. When I was kind of planning the series, you were definitely one of the people that really came to my mind as somebody who had like a very distinct like visual style to them, and like the knits that you choose to knit and stuff. So I would love to hear it kind of like in your own words.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm really surprised you say that for a start, because I don't think of myself as being somebody with a very recognizable or obvious style, or like a very fashionable person at all. I think the way that I think about my style is I really love very minimal, like cool fashion. And yeah, I'm just constantly drawn to really girly stuff as well. And so everything I wear is just trying to bring those two together, or just bouncing wildly between the two, and somehow fitting knitwear into that a lot as well. So I like really girly knitwear, cardigans, camisoles, things with little ties on, and also big oversized jumpers and stuff like that. And yeah, I guess at least that helps cover all seasons. So there's an aspect of my style for the winter and for the summer as well.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you say that, because I just repeated what you said, but how a lot of people like perceive you versus how you perceive yourself can be really different. Like that was just like the sense I got, and I think a lot of people can probably resonate, because maybe a lot of it has to do with how color coordinated your pieces are, and like how intentional you are with your yarn choice and things like that, which always sticks out in my mind as like a defining Florence feature.
Yeah. No, I think it's also because I know that I think I knit a lot of stuff in cool tones, so a lot of blues and greens and like cool browns. And I can't immediately think of anybody else who I follow on social media who uses predominantly those colors. I think of a lot of people who do a lot of reds and oranges and warm brown. But I think that's why a lot of people recognize my knitwear, because it is that different sort of color scheme a lot of the time.
I really admire people that knit in those tones, but it's like that really doesn't suit me. Because do you know your color season, by the way? Do you know that whole theory about your like color palette and seasons?
I hear people talking about it, like what lip gloss you could wear if you're warm spring or something, but I don't know. I have never tried to figure out what mine is. No? Do you know a lot about it? Or
there was like a time where it was Koreans love like personality tests and like trends like that, so they that was like one of the things that people will ask you if you met for the first time. It's like, oh, what's your like Myers-Briggs? And then it would be like, oh, what, do you know your color story? So that's how I heard about it. But I actually don't know mine either. I know you can get like tests and stuff done, but yeah, but you know, with everything that you're wearing, I feel like it would be like a cool spring. But anybody can write in the comments if
I definitely, all my makeup is like cool toned and all my clothes as well. So that seems kind of likely, I guess.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into, I mean, I know that you wear knitwear pretty much like all year round, and I know that you've said that in your podcast and stuff. But would you say your knitwear influences your style outside of just knitwear, or is it like vice versa, if that makes sense?
I definitely think that the stuff I knit influences my style, and I plan outfits around what I'm knitting. I don't think I even thought very much about what I was wearing until I started it. Like, I've never been one to follow a lot of fashion influencers or anything until I started following a lot of knitting fashion influencers. And I think I choose a lot of my clothes based on what would go well with knits that I have or that I want to make. So I definitely feel like that's the center component of my wardrobe, and everything else just falls into place around it, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting, because I thought, because of the way that you kind of talk about and like plan your knits, I always thought you more of as, maybe this is, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I always thought of you more as kind of like a product knitter rather than a process knitter. And so I thought a lot of your fashion would be influencing your knitwear. So it's like interesting to hear that it's not actually necessarily the case.
Well, I definitely am a bit of a product knitter, but like I knit something because I want to have that jumper, just because I think the jumper looks nice. And then once I have it, I'm like, okay, what trousers go with this? What shoes go with this? That I can sort out later. And I think that now I've built up more of a wardrobe with clothes that work well with my knitwear. I do have to think more about which other knitwear will also pair well with the stuff that I already have. But I think I've gradually moved my wardrobe to be stuff that pairs well with my knitwear more than, you know, individual pieces that I had before.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And how long have you been actually knitting? I'm pretty sure you've mentioned this in a video before, but it's not been like super long, right?
No, 3 or 4 years, maybe, something like that. I guess it might have been around pandemic time, but I think that's the case for most people my sort of age who are doing a lot of knitting content.
I mean, it's the same for me too, and I talked about this with Mandy as well, where like, I guess the extra time that we had like allowed for people to really get into knitting, but it is interesting to also see like how many people actually stuck around with it and became very prolific.
Well, I don't really think of myself as being like one of the pandemic knitters, just because I think I'm like a hobby jumper anyway. Before that, I was just pouring all my time into something different, you know, and now it's all knitting. So I always do this sort of thing.
I guess I did that kind of too, where I do also kind of hobby jump. It's just that knitting has actually stuck around, and I'm like, I wonder why that is, that knitting stuck around in my life. For me, I feel like maybe it was because it's so easy to kind of carry around and just like do constantly while I'm doing other things. How do you have any thoughts on that?
I think also the sense of community around it is really nice. Like when I do other hobbies, especially things that are more niche, I might not interact with anyone else who does them. Whereas knitting, you're always being encouraged by other people whose clothes you like, or, you know, talking about projects that they're working on that seem fun. And so I always feel inspired to keep going with it, whereas before I might have moved on something else.
Yeah. Oh, well, talking about inspiration, where would you say you get a lot of your inspiration from? I feel like you have pretty like different ideas. Like you're always knitting something that's like, that I feel like is a little bit different from what other people are knitting. So curious on your like inspiration process.
I'm not sure. I think like I follow a lot of people on Instagram. I don't use Pinterest at all.
Okay.
I look at a lot of clothes in stores that I like, and think about what I could make that takes the features of them that I like the most. But I think a lot of my inspiration just has come from other people who knit, just changing it to fit the sort of silhouettes and styles that I like myself. For For example, like I designed a wrap cardigan. I had previously knitted a few different wrap cardigans and I really liked them. So I just knew what aspects of those I liked the most and which I change. And then I turn it into something a bit different. But it is definitely based around other knitwear that I see. Like I'm not a very fashion person in general.
I am similar where my knitwear doesn't necessarily get influenced by a lot of external like not knitwear, if that makes any sense. Like it's always like other knitwear that's influencing what I knit rather than like a shirt that I saw on a rack or a dress that I saw somewhere. So it's kind of interesting that we have this community that kind of I don't want to say feeds off of each other. That sounds so like kind of morbid, but
I know what you mean though. Like we're evolving our own stuff. Like there are things that I see knitters wear that are clearly a trend that I have not really seen anywhere else, and I'm pretty sure like we will just see other knitters we think are cool wearing the stuff and jump on it. Like the tiny scarf thing. There are some tiny scarves that other people are wearing, but I've never seen tiny scarves at the density that you see them within the knitting community anywhere else, right? Like this is just a thing that we're all encouraging each other to make, and I don't think anyone else thinks it's really a thing at all.
Yeah, definitely we're like kind of feeding off of the main trend lines of fashion, but then I feel like we deviate a little bit towards it, towards away from it, and kind of create our own like branch of like what is fashionable. So we may get influenced by like what's happening in the main fashion world, but then like knitters are always doing something else, like the little tiny scarves. Like who is going to be making a like fabric version of the Sophie scarf and then like wearing it in public? Like I feel like I haven't seen that as well, so it's like a really good point that you bring up.
Yeah, I think like, and even within the knitting that I don't do so much, there's certain sort of hand dyed and lace and stuff, and it's super different to anything you see in shops, but clearly these people are seeing other people wearing it and thinking it's cute, and they're starting to go through trends that you don't see anywhere else, that are really distinctive and just a knitting community thing. I think it's cute. I like it.
I do also feel like whatever we're working on as knitters also feeds back into regular fashion. I don't want to say fast fashion, but that is...
No, but that is totally true.
Yeah, that's where you see it the most, I feel like. Like, I don't... I'm like trying to not really talk about like sustainability angle too much because I feel like it's pretty nuanced, and I'm frankly not like I'm not a sustainability ambassador, but it's true that you see like a lot of, I think this happens more with like pieces that are like trendier with like younger on TikTok is what I'm really trying to say.
I know, like so it's a different community, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like the sphere that you and I kind of operate in is a little bit different from that.
Yeah. Not so much chunky yarn.
Yeah, not so much chunky yarn, not a lot of knitting machine. Loose gauge crochet. Not that that's like a bad thing.
You can never take my 3mm needles from me. Like that's what I like to do the most. No, but I guess the other side to it is I see pieces in shops that really remind me of pieces that I've seen knitwear designers make. And I'm always curious as to whether those have been taking influences from the knitwear designers, or whether it's just that those designs have been a source of inspiration for the designer in the first place. You know what I mean? Like whether they've both taken influence from the same, I don't know, like more expensive designer pieces, or whether it's something that's been taken from the knitting community.
Yeah, it's like I guess that would be a really interesting thing to kind of learn about, because I think there's also with knitwear design there's different. I mean, I don't actually know if this is true, but I do feel like there's like two different channels of knitwear design, where like one you go commercial and then you work in-house for like a fashion brand or something, and then you have the other knitwear design, like much like how you're designing knitting patterns, and how like other designers like Petite Knit or like Sari Nordlund, for example, are designing patterns for a consumer audience that is knitting up their own knitwear design. So I would have imagined the mechanics and the way they like kind of assess fashion trends must be different in both of those groups. But I don't know how they, yeah, that would be kind of interesting to explore if I can get somebody to actually talk about it, but I don't have any connections.
What, like somebody who knows more about commercial, like for, well, more than commercial, for big companies designing stuff.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to have a guest with such a different like background.
Yeah, I don't know where I would go find one, but cool. We've kind of talked about like how you got started and your inspirations and things like that. I think it's interesting to talk about also like what keeps you going with knitting.
I think it's one of those tricky things where you have a hobby and it becomes a bit of a part-time job, and then you kind of feel like you have to do it, and you're always trying to balance, doing it for fun and doing it for your job, and there's definitely a bit of that keeps me going, knowing that I want to release a pattern at this point and this point and this point, so that I have money to buy things, or at least that my hobby can sustain itself, because it is an expensive hobby to have. But I think I just have a lot of motivation to work on. Like, people are like, oh, how do you finish your project? How do you not get a second sock syndrome? I don't know. I want the clothing. Like, I'm not leaving this thing on the needles because I want to wear it. It's not doing anything if I leave it here half finished. And so I tend to just knit things way faster than I should. And because I've got the next thing that I want to start working on waiting, and I want to jump into another project. So I've never had issues with staying motivated to keep going, I don't think.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's so interesting hearing, because I am the camp that gets second sock syndrome. And I think it's that, just like my desire to not knit a second sock overrides my desire to have the finished piece. So it's really good to hear from somebody who has like the opposite kind of viewpoint. And it's really good to hear that you're really motivated to keep doing knitting like that. And I think it's really, frankly, inspiring for a lot of people, that you produce so many, results. And it's like kind of for me, a big part of reason why I watch other podcasters is kind of like similar to why you would watch hauls in a little bit. Like, you get that like satisfaction of seeing finished objects.
It is the same vibe.
Yeah. Like, I didn't actually work on this, but I may get inspired to knit something, and also like I get that like secondhand gratification of watching somebody like lay out all their knit pieces and go through them. So I think personally, that's one of the reasons why I watch your podcast. So it's good that we have differences, different people in the sphere.
Yeah. And you can split knitters into like people with second sock syndrome and like people who knit the second sock in a day because they want the socks. And I'm definitely part of that latter group. I don't think, like, my second sock always comes together so fast compared to the first one.
Yeah. People in the audience, tag yourself. Are you second sock syndrome, or are you the other side where you finish the second sock faster? Let us know in the comments. Cool. So yeah, do you feel like you've knit pretty much every day since you started knitting? Because I feel like that's how I have been since I started YouTube, at least.
Yeah, I think I can't think of any days. Maybe if I was like away on holiday for a couple of days, I may have missed a day. Like, I went away for a weekend, but throughout exams or just on a day-to-day basis, I am knitting every single day with, no exceptions.
Yeah, and it's like, that's probably what produces a lot of the results. It's not necessarily like how fast you knit like physically, because there's that, but then if you're knitting every single day consistently, then you're always going to have some progress regardless of how quickly you knit.
I have ADHD, so I can't I can't watch TV or watch anything without my hands doing something. And so, I also wake up stupidly early in the morning. I've knitted for like 3 hours by the time it's 9 a.m. and then I get up and get on with my day. When I say I'm a fast knitter, it's not because I'm a fast knitter. It's because I knit a lot of hours per day compared to a lot of people, I think. So I get a lot of pieces done.
Yeah, I think that's like something that people don't really realize. That I also like am the same way where yeah, like I basically knit all the time. If I'm sitting down, I have knitting in front of me. If I'm also like knitting at work, so like don't tell my boss, but like
Exposing yourself.
yeah, I mean, yeah, if I'm in a meeting, I'm not. They don't have to know. Like if the camera's up here and then my hands are down here. So, interested in hearing a little bit about like what creating your own clothes and wearable kind of means to you. I think in the knitting sphere, a lot of people have a very focus on like wearables. So I'm always curious on hearing like why they choose to make the things that they wear versus like other things and like what drives that motivation.
Why do I make wearables? Why do I want to design these things? It's because, I mean, when you make those sorts of things, they're the kind of things that people are going to see, you know, like they affect the way that you present yourself. And maybe I'm just quite a self-conscious or like vain person, but if I'm going to put time into something, I want people to see it. And when I design things, I design things because I want a garment and it's something very specific. And I probably want that because I want it to pair with an outfit or to wear to an event or something like that. And so I end up like coming up with a way to make it, you know?
Yeah, and that's actually something that I feel like people don't acknowledge. Is that a lot of reason? I think you have to be a certain type of person, honestly, to want to share what you made and put yourself online in a way where people respond. I definitely feel like, well, maybe I'm projecting, so you can cut me off if you're like, what are you talking about? But like, you put yourself on the internet a lot of the times because you want some sort of response, and then the community like kind of revolves around like people reacting to what you've made. And so it makes sense that as like knitting influencer, I think you're fitting more of that bill than like me. But
no, your channel's growing really fast, and you have to acknowledge the fact that you're becoming an influencer, whether you like it or not at a certain point.
it's a title given to you if you want, even if you want it or not.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
But yeah, like as an influencer, you want people to respond to your posts and your videos and your content in general. So I do feel like sometimes that shapes, not necessarily, it hasn't like affected what I knit yet, but it's kind of affected how I design thumbnails, or like I've had like thoughts about like, okay, well, I didn't do any clothing knitting. I don't have any clothing FOs. Like, are people going to watch this video? I only made bags because I couldn't bear to knit a sweater. Like, will people care about that? So yeah, that's a good point that you brought up around that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the podcasting thing. You were saying what else helps people be motivated to finish projects. The podcasting thing does help because I know I need to get a video up like around a certain date, and I want to have a pair of socks to show. So that sock needs to be done, or this top needs to be done. And sometimes that is the bit of extra motivation you need. But yeah, it's I think the whole designing thing has a lot of different components to it that are quite different. So that, you know, you're designing the clothes, but also a big part of it is figuring out how to photograph it for social media. In a way that it's appealing to other people as well. And I mean, there's other aspects as well, like doing the whole social media thing is not something I'm great at. There's also all the grading and stuff. So you get to do a lot of different things that are really different. And I do struggle with the social media presentation, the taking pictures that are going to make people want the things I wear. I find that really difficult. Some people are so good at it. Like we're all just buying petite knit patterns because we want to dress like petite knit and live her life, you know, like that's what she's selling, the whole petite knit fantasy usually. And it's very hard to try and be that person, you know?
Yeah. Would you say you have a kind of brand in mind that you're trying to present when you're kind of talk or like designing or like photographing or making content about your knitwear that you designed?
I guess like, yeah, it sort of comes into having a personal style. I feel like my personal style is less strong when it comes to clothing compared to other things. Like I have much more of a sense of how I want a room to look, or, how it's that sort of aesthetic life, that how you want your desk to be, what kitchenware you want. Um, you're putting all of that together into a vibe you're trying to sell to people. And I feel like my clothing is not my strongest part of that. But I guess I now have more of a sense in my mind of the sort of look that I'm trying to sell to people. And you are very selective about what you are taking pictures of or where you're taking pictures to try and keep everything sticking to that vibe, or that, yeah, I spent most of the last year in a uni room, and I don't want to sell that like uni bathroom fantasy to people. That's not going to make them want to buy my patterns. So it is a struggle. I think also this is a weird one, but I feel like because I live in this house, I feel like the look I'm trying to sell is an unfortunate word to use, I think. The look I'm trying to portray on my Instagram is also just really influenced by my parents and their home decor, because this is the space that I have to photograph in. So everything I wear is going to match their colors, like their taste in furniture. I have to work around that as well.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's just funny that you say that, because you match the color of the cushion in the background right now.
I've been influenced so much by their taste in stuff that I've been surrounded by for my entire life, We've always had our house painted this color, so it's natural that's the color I'm going to start wearing the most.
That's the subliminal messaging that you're getting that you're not aware of.
Definitely.
Yeah. And with a lot of these knitwear designers, as well as like, just regular knitting influencers, they definitely curate their space to really match the vibe of their knitting. And that's not something that I like really actively thought about, which is interesting, because I think about this a lot for like regular influencers. Like I follow like fashion influencers that like move cities, or like if they have a trip somewhere, their entire wardrobe that they're posting from that trip is like matching the vibe of wherever they're going. And I do feel like, I think as knitters, a lot of our photo shoots, or like a lot of our vibe is like maybe contained in an indoor space rather than in like an outdoor space.
Yeah.
Like the amount of like grass that you've seen, like fake grass, like ornaments, or like dried herbs in the background while you're holding up your perfectly styled sock. That's like a part that people do,
yep.
But then we don't explicitly talk about it. And it's like, for me, that's really difficult to kind of emulate, because I don't think about that like kind of actively. Like my space is always a mess and I like never have anywhere to film.
But I do wonder if we feel worse about the settings that we're photographing our work in than other people do, because we see the bit that doesn't get posted, right? Like I can look at my messy space and be like, oh my goodness, I'm so uncool compared to all these people with their beautiful homes. But for what people see in my Instagram, they don't see any of that. And so they only see the bit that I've really curated and decided exactly where everything's going. And that's what I'm going to share, Like this bit right here is all carefully curated. And then we've got like piles of stuff over there, but no one sees those, right? So I feel like it's probably giving a better impression than you think.
Yeah. And it's podcasters are all people. I think generally with podcasting, YouTube, well, okay, not like traditional YouTube, but like knitting YouTube is a lot more relaxed, I feel like, in terms of how people present their settings. Or I've seen some people who like don't curate their lives as much, and I think that's a really good variable to have in like, because you get a lot of like really manicured like life from a lot of this like lifestyle content. So it is interesting to see the other side of it, where it's like chaotic and not as like curated, but also whatever drives like engagement is like the more like perfect life curated content. So it's kind of like you're at a crossroads of like, okay, how trashy do I want to be on camera today?
And it's one of the things of podcasting, I don't want to sound rude, but like it has quite a low barrier to entry in terms of the equipment you need and the editing ability you have to have. There are definitely people who are just filming 2 hours of footage on their phone and uploading it directly. And so you do get the variation from people who are doing something that's really like unfiltered and they're just sitting down to chat, up to podcasts that are very polished and trying to give off a certain vibe. And it's quite nice that you get a bit of everything in the community, I think.
Definitely, I fall into the category where I like don't plan anything going into a podcast, but I always thought you were really well spoken. I mean, even now, just in conversation, I do feel like you're like super well spoken. So I'm like curious on if you kind of, I don't want to say rehearse, but do you like, I'm curious about your like process on how you plan your podcasts.
I don't do a lot of planning. I know what pieces I'm going to show and they're placed there. But I really just sit down and film. And anything that goes wrong, that's a future me problem to sort out, you know? Like if I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm just rambling on and making no sense, like that's something I will deal with later when I'm editing. The raw footage is not well spoken. It's always a bit of a mess, but I try and sort it out before it goes online at least.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've definitely cut out so much footage of just rambling. So whatever people are seeing online is like even a processed version of the regular chaos. So it's like, I guess we could talk a little bit about like purchasing non-knit clothes. I think you kind of started getting into this a little bit earlier, where you said you knit what you want to knit, and then you kind of like make decisions on how you want to style that item based on that. Do you feel like how you purchase like ready to wear clothing has kind of been impacted by the things that you knit?
Definitely. I mean, aside from the whole like what kind of style of clothing you're choosing, I think part of it is if you do a lot of knitting and you progressively spend more and more in your hobby and you get the nicer and nicer yarn, you just become more and more of like a fiber snob, you know? And there's a lot of clothing that I have had for years, which I cannot touch anymore because now I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel fancy. And like, I feel like I have high standards. So I feel like as I've knitted more, my taste has gone from being very fancy, but like affordable clothing to buying more basic stuff that fits with all of my knitwear, but which I'm spending more per piece because I'm hopefully spending more on quality and less on fun. And it does just like thinking more about your clothing and thinking more about what, like how long a piece will last and how it will fit into your wardrobe, I think means that you end up buying less stuff, but spending more on each piece as well. And tend to buy more simple things.
Yeah. Oh, so like it almost feels like the knitwear becomes their centerpiece, and then the stuff that you buy around it becomes more toned down. Oh my God, that's like the same.
And it has to live up to it as well. Like it's got to be the same quality. So everything, yeah, it all revolves around the knitwear at this point.
I mean, but ultimately you feel like you're buying less, right? Like because you're kind of thinking about
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense because like we're producing a lot of clothes as well, like just like creating a lot of clothes. I wonder if the volume at which we acquire by the means of either making or like buying has changed with knitting. Do you have a sense of that at all?
I think I definitely had more of a fast fashion problem in the past. Like I feel like I'd buy a lot of things and never wear them or wear them once and then they just sit there until they got sent to a charity shop. And I think everything I get now gets worn, or even all the knitwear I make still gets worn. So I think I do have fewer clothes and I buy a lot less and make a lot less. Like I was getting a lot of fast fashion at one point, I think.
We all have those times. It's like to know what you like, you almost have to like, and not that this is always the case, but I had a kind of a period of like heavy consumption. And now that's kind of given me a better sense of like what I like as not in just clothes, but also just like homeware and like other things like that. Because like having it in your possession sometimes like to me feels is like the best indicator of if you like it or not. This is not really good news for my wallet because I end up getting rid of a lot of things. But yeah.
I don't know. For me at my age, it's probably partly just growing up as well. Like when I look back to my time before I was knitting, that's me as a teen as well. And I think, I make poor teen choices back then. And so my wardrobe is partly influenced by my knitting and partly influenced by becoming an adult and feeling like I'm dressing more like an adult now than I used to as well.
Yeah, that's also very true. I never thought I would be a coastal grandma kind of person, but I'm more and more finding myself with button-down shirts that I didn't think I would wear.
They're cute and they're practical. I think my trouble is I wear a lot of things that look cute on other people and I want to wear them. And then when I wear them, I just feel fake. Like I have this trench coat and it's really cute. But when I wear it, I feel like I'm like cosplaying as an adult. And I am an adult, so I shouldn't feel like that, but it just feels so wrong. And I think over time, I'm able to wear more of this stuff and not feel like it's all fake and inappropriate.
Yeah, it's like whenever I wear a trench coat, I feel like 3 lizards in a coat.
I was gonna say, I feel like I'm 3 babies in a trench coat, and then I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. Where was I going with that? Yeah,
I don't know. I guess part of fashion is just like confidence, but I lean towards like safer alternatives because I know that I want to wear what I knit. And I've had occasions where I had to cull out like what I don't wear in my knitwear wardrobe, and it just always makes me so much pain to like get rid of the things that you spent so much time on.
I'm lucky I have family members who'll take them and wear them all the time, so it doesn't feel like. But I do want to go back and revisit a lot of the stuff that I've already made and take some time to improve it, because right now I cast something off and I'm like, right, that's done, I can throw that to one side and never think about it again, just wear it. But actually there's a lot of projects that I do really need to revisit and make them better. It's just hard finding the motivation to do that, at least for me.
Yeah, it's like when it's off the needles, it's like in your mind you've compartmentalized it as like, that's a done project, I never want to touch it again. And it takes a lot of mental fortitude to go back and fix your mistakes or improve it. And some things you don't know until you wear it for an extended period of time.
Yeah. Sleeve lengths just change. Knitting for Olive, the sleeves get shorter when I wear it, and I don't know why. Like when I block it.
That's a good tip.
Oh,
I did not.
don't listen to me, but
okay. we'll figure it out. But it's like, oh no, but it's so true about sleeve lengths. I've had so many. I'm really bad at gauging how much yarn grows over time. So all my sleeves end up like down here by the end of my blocking, and I have to like roll it up.
Apart from my knitting for Olive, where it makes no sense. It's the merino and the silk mohair together. All the sleeves get shorter as I wear them, and yeah, they're all too short, and I need to go back and add like 2 inches to all of them, basically.
2 inches is a lot. Dang.
Maybe I'm conservative when I'm knitting my sleeves as well. Like I'm impatient and I want it done, so they're probably a little bit short in the first place, even before they start shrinking.
Yeah. Are you do you have what's your preferred sleeve length? Is it like bracelet length, or is it like
long? I just don't have the patience to pair with that like taste,
Yeah, I'm always like, it'll block out.
No, you a long sleeve person?
I like, it's usually like 10 centimeters of rib, and then it's like I needed to cover like the top of my fingers basically, so that I could hide my hands whenever.
Yeah, it feels cozy being able to like retract into your shell again.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I need to stop making clothes that are like way too oversized, but then I can't stop because I want to layer like 4 things underneath. 3 lizards in one sweater.
I can't wait for winter so I can get the winter clothes out again and layer all my knitwear.
Yeah, I love summer knitting, but also just like I can't do too much of it because it kind of hurts my hands. Maybe it's my fiber choice, and then like the amount of knitting that you're doing on smaller needles. But yeah. Oh, do you ever find your hands hurting, or like do you, like, since you knit a lot, I'm wondering if you have any experiences with that.
Not a lot. The one like I can knit a lot in one day and it's fine. The one thing that always gets me is short circular needles. I can't, because something about the way I hold my needles. I'm wearing like plasters on my hand in my last video, and it's because I got these blisters on my hands from knitting a turtleneck on short circular needles. Like I gripped the needles too tightly in the wrong place, just when they're short needles. So I do magic loop for everything because magic loop's totally comfortable for me to knit. But like it's bad. I like blister my hands from it. I don't get general hand pain. It's only that, really.
Oh my God. I was actually wondering why you had a Band-Aid when I was watching your video, because I was like, what happened? But now we get the backstory.
It's this turtleneck. This blood, sweat, and tears went into this, but yeah.
Literal blood, sweat, and tears, because you literally got blisters. Wow.
Yes.
I mean, it looks cute.
It better be cute.
Yeah.
Like, it's the least it can do after that.
It looks cute from the little bit that I saw. Oh, wow. That's a different knitting-related injury that I didn't know you could get.
I've never heard of it happening to anyone else, like just me.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, oh, you get like wrist pain. No, you straight up get blisters.
Just like down here. No, because I used to do quite a bit of rowing when I was at uni, and I used to get like really blistered hands from that. And people would always ask in my YouTube comments, they'd be like, "Oh, is that knitting injury?" I'm like, "What do you think I'm doing when I'm knitting to have like these holes in my hands?"
Well, now we know that it was possible.
Yeah, it's mostly quite a harmless hobby.
We're kind of jumping all over the place, but I also meant to ask you this earlier with knitting. How many pieces would you say you had to kind of clear out of your closet because you didn't like them for one reason or another of your knitwear that you've knitted over the years?
I've given a few pieces to my mom because she's the same clothing size as me, so she's easy to give stuff to. I have also given a couple things to my sister. I haven't cleared out anything beyond that point because I'm too attached to pieces I've spent a lot of time on to throw them away. So anything completely unwearable, I still have because I can't give it to someone else, but I don't have the heart to get rid of it either. There's probably like 3 or 4 pieces I've given away. Not a lot, I think, when you compare it to how many pieces I've made in total. There are definitely a few things I don't wear enough though, and I either should do something with or frog eventually.
Yeah, it's because I had a couple of. I asked this because I basically don't own like the first like 5 or so pieces that I've knit as I started knitting because I didn't like them. And it always came down to like some stupid thing that I didn't make a conscious decision about, like choosing like the wrong yarn or like choosing terrible patterns or just like making dumb mistakes.
That's why I made the video tutorial, because like all the stuff I wish someone had told me. And to be fair, they did tell me, like, you know, the patterns are always saying make a gauge swatch, and I'm still there like, I don't need to do that. It's like my second knitting project. I'm too good at this. I don't need to do that. And then obviously it turned out bad. Other than that, everything I've thrown out is just like skinny sleeves. I hate skinny sleeves on a big jumper. Any pattern like that, I've had to give away because it's not going to work for me.
Yeah, I need the room around my arms. Why would I have all this room around my body and not around my arms?
Exactly. I don't mind something that's fitted everywhere, but the big body and the skinny sleeve. And so I never identified the issue, because I mean, it's a taste thing. I don't like it. Other people do. And I never spot it on patterns before I knit them, because if I spotted it, I could fix it, you know? But I'm completely oblivious until I try it on at the end and I'm like, oh, skinny sleeves again. This one has to go. I should probably have learned my lesson by now.
I mean, but it is sometimes hard to tell from like just
the posed pictures. Everyone poses, so you can't.
Yeah. I'm like wondering if it'll be helpful eventually for knitting patterns to also evolve, where you have like a turnaround like you would in like commercial like postings, you know, like they just shoot the model like straight on and then back and then like with their arms up.
That will tell all. Yeah
You can't hide your skinny sleeves from me with your posing like this anymore.
No, I think that would be would be a good thing.
I mean, but also I think knitting podcasts help a lot with that kind of stuff because they like go into it, you know? They like give you a lowdown.
Or Ravelry. Ravelry is just incredible. There's so much on there. There's going to be someone with their arms up if it's like a popular pattern.
Yeah, the amount of like free content that like knitters will just put up there for other people to peruse is like their penchant for documentation is amazing. Like I've never been a documentation person, but so it's like I'm so glad that other people are in this community.
I feel like I should be filling out my Ravelry because I've gained so much from reading other people's that I feel I need to give back in the same way, you know?
Yeah, I am a bad person and I never update Ravelry. So sad. Well, I think that's like a decent place to stop. I'm sure you have better things to do than sit on a Zoom meeting.
I baked cookies. They're waiting for me to eat, so that's going to be my next thing.
See, that's so much better. Well, yeah, thank you again for participating, and I really enjoyed our conversation, and I feel like it's always good to get another podcaster's perspective because like how people approach things is like really different, obviously. So
thank you very much for having me. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. What's your beverage of choice that you've got?
It's tea. I know it looks vaguely alcoholic, but it's tea. Yeah, I hope you're giving the wrong impression.
Nice old-fashioned. Oh my god, I lost my train of thought. I had the next question lined up and it's gone. Also, I said interesting like 24 times in this video, so I'm gonna have to cut that out. God.